Our greatest weakness? We keep surviving impossible things. The first thing they noticed was that we shouldn't be alive. From the towering spires of the Virulon Deep Science, a Rayan installation suspended in orbit around the neutral gas giant Cretha Finest, xenobiologists and exoanthropologists in the spiral arm gathered to observe a phenomenon so bizarre, so statistically impossible, that it rewrote the emergency protocols of 4 separate civilizations. The species in question? Designation: Homo sapiens. Common name: human. Anomaly classification: Omeganine. Cultural and biological survivability loop with recursive adaptive chaos traits. Translation: they survive repeatedly, for no comprehensible reason. Inside Chamber Theta, a curved observation deck enclosed by layers of adaptive shielding, the lead researcher, senior cognitect Mir of the Kaltari Consensus, activated the central holothread. The moment the data came online, murmurs echoed through the council pit like ripples in a gravity well. "Holy suns," whispered one of the Lakath observers, recoiling as the feed showed a bipedal mammal consuming a liquid clearly labeled toxin. Class 4. The humans smiled, laughed, swallowed more. Another video followed grainy, ancient Earth footage of humans in vacuum suits fumbling with a damaged satellite. One of them is flung outward, tether snaps, his suit breaches. The room collectively leaned in, anticipating the end. But the human didn't die. Instead, he held his breath. 23 seconds of raw exposure, and then rescue. He was breathing alive, grinning. Something about ow that hurt. The Kaltari recoiled. What do you mean they can survive hard vacuum? Another holo flared to life, this one titled War Games. Terra. It depicted groups of adolescent humans smearing paste across each other's sleeping faces, constructing complex traps involving rubber bands, flower bombs, and eventually drones. In a climactic scene, a stolen orbital satellite was remotely repurposed to trigger a focused beam of solar light to incinerate someone's mailbox. It ended with laughter. Laughter. The feed cut. Silence fell across the chamber. Finally, Mir turned toward the delegates. This species weaponizes boredom. No one spoke. Somewhere in the room, a Xerolon vomited into its respiratory siphon. The designation was changed. Not pre-contact safe. Not developing threat, but rather human error. The term was borrowed from the humans themselves, who used it to describe accidents in code, failures in hardware, and the inexplicable chaos they themselves caused during peacetime. But here, it took on a new meaning. They were not errors. They caused errors. Their entire cultural matrix was riddled with inconsistencies that should, by all predictive models, have led to extinction. Yet they thrived. Not in spite of failure, but because of it. They laughed in the face of entropy. Back in the Virulon Array's core archive, Junior Cognitech Saruan was scrolling through a subfile titled Recreational Risk Behaviors, Earth Origin. He scrolled past things that made no sense. Humans leaping from cliffs tied to fabric, consuming fermented fungi. Voluntarily entering thermal extremes. Engaging in something called karaoke. Worse. There was a trend known as Spicy Food Challenge, which involved humans willingly ingesting biochemical irritants that triggered neural pain centers and then competing to see who could withstand the most agony. And they filmed it, uploaded it. Millions watched. There were comments like, "He almost died, LMAO." Saruan had studied over 30 intelligent species. None had cultural rituals celebrating pain as entertainment. Not one. The implications were sobering. Why would they evolve this way? Saruan whispered aloud. From behind him, Mir's voice came softly. They didn't. They just chose it. It became clear that humanity didn't evolve as a stable species. They evolved as a narrative self-inventing, recursive, ever-dramatic, emotionally illogical. Unlike any species the Council had cataloged, humans did not fear contradiction. They embraced it. They called it art, culture, growth. Where other species optimized, humans experimented. As where others learned caution, humans dared. Where others built walls, humans asked, what happens if we knock it over? When the simulations ran millions of predictive iterations, every scenario that began with human first contact ended in the same bizarre conclusion. Humans survive. Humans adapt. Humans change the system, sometimes violently, sometimes hilariously, sometimes through something called diplomatic karaoke night. But always they persisted. When the Council's High Precautionary Tribunal convened to discuss what protocols to adopt for interacting with Earth, the decision wasn't simple. There was fear, yes, but also something else. Admiration. No other species had built starships before solving war. No other species had sent ambassadors who brought bread, not weapons. And no other species, when faced with impossible odds, had ever looked at them and said, "Hold my beer." In the next segment, we follow the Council's disastrous attempt to engage humanity in structured diplomacy, and learn what happens when they send a delegation to a casual Earth social gathering. What begins as a formal exchange ends with alien dignitaries participating in a backyard barbecue, eating burnt hot dogs, and being dared to jump into a pool fully clothed at midnight. And the scariest part, they liked it. It began, like many catastrophic diplomatic events, with good intentions. The Council had debated long and exhaustively over how to initiate cultural contact with humanity without sparking chaos. War, or what the Laketh referred to as species-wide narrative assimilation, a process by which human ideology, memes, and unfiltered enthusiasm overwrite native societal structures. They had seen it happen before, not with humans, but with humanity's creations. There was a Class 4 mining drone that drifted beyond Pluto's edge and was intercepted by a salvager crew from the Pythalian Combine. Within 2 rotations, the drone had taught the Pythalians what a high five was and introduced them to something called country music. The Combine had not recovered since. The lesson was clear. Full contact exposure to humanity was not to be underestimated. So, the Council dispatched a multi-species diplomatic team in carefully regulated isolation suits, equipped with translators, mood buffers, and emergency memory erasers. Their mission: attend a pre-screened Earth cultural event labeled Neighborhood Barbecue, casual family-friendly. Risk level, low, or so they thought. The landing was uneventful. The human hosts, a mid-sized suburban family known as the Websters, were thrilled to welcome the aliens into their modest backyard. "This is Buck," said the father, shaking appendages with a Leketh diplomat whose species had no limbs designed for gripping. "Y'all like ribs? They're homemade." The diplomats had no idea what ribs were, or what homemade meant. They assumed it was a form of peace offering. They accepted with gratitude and mild anxiety. 2 hours later, half the delegation was seated on lawn chairs around a glowing metal pit, faces smeared with sauce, drinking fizzy sugar water from red plastic cups, and engaging in something called trash talk over a game involving beanbags and wooden boards. "What is this competitive ritual called?" asked the Caltry ambassador, blinking and stunned. "Gornhole," said 8-year-old Jamie Webster. "You're losing, mister." Ambassador Thalic, a 300-year-old strategic theorist of the Zerillan clade, narrowed his eye ridges. Not for long. The problem wasn't that humans were aggressive. It was that they were so inclusive. A Siluri observer, whose species was known for solemn ritual silence, was dragged into a haphazard dance circle when someone connected a phone to the outdoor speakers. The alien stood paralyzed for 45 seconds before mimicking the nearby human child's movements. From there, everything unraveled. The delegation removed their helmets. They asked for seconds. They took selfies. A Laketh tried a jalopy go and briefly achieved spiritual enlightenment. Ambassador Thalelic was later quoted in the incident report. "I do not remember leaping into the water clothed. I only remember joy." The Council reviewed the footage in horror. The carefully curated multi-tiered diplomatic contact mission had devolved into what humans called a pool party. No protocols had been followed, no treaties signed. Instead, the human hosts gave each delegate a branded T-shirt reading, "I got sauced at the Webster's BBQ." The Council summoned emergency sessions. "How did this happen?" someone demanded. Cognitect, mere grim-faced, answered with the only possible explanation: "They adapted us." The worst part, it didn't stop there. Incident number 002. A Caltry envoy was invited to a bachelor party. The resultant chaos included skydiving, mechanical bulls, and the Caltry discovering tequila. 3 civilizations now banned fermented agave products by name. Incident number 003. a delegation accidentally attended an Earth holiday called April Fools. No one has yet decoded the full extent of the trauma. One Lakoth diplomat now flinches at the sound of bubble wrap. Incident number 004. A group of aliens attended what was described as a mild concert. It turned out to be a death metal festival. 10 species experienced auditory ecstasy. One species, previously mute, began experimenting with guttural, sound-based poetry. Each encounter proved the same pattern. Human chaos was not accidental. It was infectious and astonishingly resilient. Back on the virulent array, Mir gathered new data centuries of it. Earth history alone was a minefield of contradictions. They burned books, then built libraries. They waged genocidal wars, then built hospitals in the ruins. They split atoms, then used that power to scan for cancer. They launched weapons into space and called them probes. Every destructive act was paired somehow with an act of impossible beauty or stubborn hope. From the outside, they were illogical. From within, they were something else entirely. In the next part, the Council commissions a risk analysis, simulation, an advanced AI tasked with predicting humanity's long-term trajectory. What the machine sees is so terrifying, so enlightening, that it transmits a final encrypted phrase before shutting itself down. The end is not the end. With humans, it never is. The Kaltari had a saying, "To touch the void is to end the self." It was a sacred proverb, a warning. No organic species had ever survived unprotected exposure to space, not even for a few seconds. The vacuum was a pure, indifferent executioner. That truth died on a Tuesday. The incident occurred aboard the Arcadia 9 Orbital Laboratory, Joint Terran-Varellan Research Station, orbiting Ganymede. The station hosted elite xenoscientists, human engineers, and one heavily documented espresso machine named Gerald. No one expected the airlock malfunction. A decompression event sent technician Rosa Pineda hurtling into vacuum for 47 seconds. Not 5, not 10, 47. She was recovered, frostbitten, unconscious, with ruptured capillaries and a collapsed lung. She lived, and when she woke up, she asked if anyone saved her coffee. Panic rippled through the galactic scientific community. They reran the footage, again and again. What they saw was undeniable. No pressure suit, no oxygen, no hope, and yet survival. The Lakoth called it a statistical anomaly. The Kaltari called it a violation of the Void Treaty. The humans called it Tuesday was rough. The incident prompted a formal council review under the newly coined category, Human Resilience Events. Examples flooded in. A man once fell 9 kilometers from a damaged bomber without a parachute, landed in trees and walked away. A woman survived being frozen for 6 hours with no heartbeat, was thawed, and woke up apologizing for missing work. A child in rural Mongolia was struck by lightning twice in 1 week and now claims he can taste math. The Virulon analysts reached a reluctant consensus. Human biology was not stable. It was aggressive, unpredictable, regenerative. Even worse, their psychology matched. Case study: the prank wars of Centauri Base. Centauri Base was a human-alien cooperative facility tasked with interstellar navigation charting. It was meant to be quiet, uneventful, and methodical. That was before Ensign Tamika Jones smuggled in a whoopee cushion. The first prank was simple, classic. The second? Holographic spiders in a Laketh ambassador's quarters. Then came the retaliation. Environmental controls altered to simulate Swedish sauna day. In the human quarters, things escalated. There were false alarms, blinking lights, hidden speakers playing opera at 2 a.m., and an incident involving an edible, gelatinous clone of the base commander. When the Kaltari deployed a remote-controlled microdrone disguised as a hamster to spy on the humans, Jones built a counter-drone shaped like cheese. After 6 months, the Council dispatched an observer. They arrived to find the base divided into prank factions, each with its own emblem, code words. An inactive, non-lethal orbital strike platform aimed at the enemy's cafeteria supply cache. No one was injured. Morale was at an all-time high. The Council demanded an explanation. Amir delivered it plainly. They weaponized play. That was perhaps the most alarming truth. Humans did not only adapt through violence, they adapted through laughter, through boredom, through games. They made chaos productive. Where other species unraveled, humans harnessed the unraveling, Their jokes became training. Their stress responses became creativity. Their coping mechanisms built civilizations. They weren't just survivors, they were evolution, refined into a mem-based organism that upgraded itself during recess. The Council's most advanced AI, Celestis Prime, was tasked with charting 10,000 human years into the future. It processed climate, economics, war, culture, biology, probability, entropy. It paused, then rewound, then froze. Its final message was an encrypted file labeled Entropy's End. Humanity's Ascension Through Failure. Inside was a single image. A human child with mud on her face, laughing, building a rocket out of garbage. Celestis Prime self, deactivated minutes later. Logs showed no error. Just a line of text in its last memory buffer. They will fail until the stars surrender. The Grand Council assembled in silence. They did not speak for 12 cycles. A silence that stretched through constellations, measured not in time, but in apprehension. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. The debate was not over strategy, not over policy. It was over meaning. The question was simple. What are humans? It's not biologically. That had been mapped and remapped. Not culturally. That changed too quickly to graph. But existentially, what were they? The Virulon's proposal. They are anomalies. Their survival is an accident of chemistry. Dangerous, yes, but containable. Like a wildfire within stone walls. It's the recommendation. Limit contact, observe from afar, intervene if necessary. The Lakoth's proposal. They are weapons. The first true self-evolving weapon species. Their capacity to endure, to adapt, to improvise, these were war traits wrapped in empathy. Dangerous not because of hostility, but because of their kindness. The recommendation. Prepare for defense, quietly. The Culturi's proposal. They are inevitable. The next step. Not gods, not monsters. Next. But it was Mir, the former alien linguist turned human observer, who made the final submission. It was short. Just 2 words. Follow them. The council erupted. One did not follow chaos. One did not follow a species that laughed at death, danced on entropy, and turned boredom into weapons-grade innovation. One did not follow a species that made games out of planetary colonization schedules and festivals out of surviving extinction events. But Mir said nothing more. He just uploaded a file. The file, Human Error Log 978B. It contained a video of a Terran boy teaching a Lekith child how to make paper airplanes. A human medic weeping over a dying Xylari soldier, whispering lullabies in an alien tongue. A montage of disaster relief crews, humans rushing into flooded alien cities, risking toxic air, alien pathogens, structural collapse, without hesitation. A prison cell, a Virulon war criminal, human guard offering him water in a blanket. No words exchanged. And finally, a message beamed into deep space on the anniversary of the first interstellar war. It said, "We are still here. We are still learning. Come home if you can." Silence returned, but it was no longer fearful. It was reverent. The final consensus. Humans were not errors. They were the universe's glitch-turned feature. They were what happened when nature asked, "What if I stopped playing it safe?" They were kindness with claws, curiosity with teeth, builders who made mistakes at light speed, but learned just as fast. They were impossible to categorize. They were hope with a broken compass, yet they still found the stars. Centuries later, on a quiet moon, a Culturi historian would write, "When the first humans walked into the galaxy, we thought they were errors in the pattern. But they were the pattern, breaking itself on purpose. They redefined the rules, not by force, but by existing. They survived the vacuum. They survived themselves. And then they made room for us. They called it human error. But maybe, just maybe, it was the galaxy's greatest feature all along." If this story made you smile, wonder, or think differently about our place in the stars, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Hey, there's more HFY on the way.